How much should accounting services cost? Whether it's bookkeeping, tax returns, accounting, audit, really doesn't matter. How much should accounting services cost? Now I'm going to give you the super summarized version of the answer, and the answer is $1,800 per day. That's the short answer, $1,800 per day. In this video, I'm going to attempt to prove that that number makes total sense and how you use that number to figure out how to price your jobs, okay? Because not all jobs take a day and that sort of thing. So we'll discuss that. Hi, my name is Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA. I ran an accounting firm for 17 years until I sold it a couple of years ago. And now I started a new organization called Reframe that helps accounting professionals be seen as creative, innovative, and transformative. And one of the most important things that accounting professionals need to do today in a post-AI age is to price their services correctly. Now, this video is going to be a super short and summarized version of a complete 10-hour plus course that I recently published called Reframe Your Pricing. I'm going to go ahead and put links in the description. It's a big investment, but the course is super complete and it contains over 20 years of my experience selling professional services. It includes things like strategy and theory, understanding how value is understood from the perspective of the accounting firm, of the accounting professional that's growing with the client itself, the long-term value, transformational value, all that stuff gets discussed here. Then we talk about that shift in mindset to go from theory to practice, between strategy and tactics. And then we have a whole bunch of tactics and formulas, different points of view of how you can think about pricing your services with anchoring options, value pricing, using the value conversation, using 5 key questions, measuring changes and transformations, measuring risk. There's all sorts of different techniques and processes that I teach. I've accumulated this over the years, and also a lot of prompts so you can use ChatGPT to help you implement it and brainstorm these techniques and tactics on your own. So definitely check out the course if you want to learn more in depth. Now, my job now is to prove to you that that $1,800 is a number that kind of makes sense. And again, it could go up and down based on your practice and the type of practice you want to run. But I'm going to prove to you that that is the number that you should be looking at. So I am in the IRS SOI tax stats, where you can download tax return macro data from tax returns. So in this case, this is broken down by industry. These are corporate tax returns by industry, and the latest one is 2013. Now, don't worry that it's 12, 13 years old. Don't worry about that, because even though the numbers change, the percentages don't change. I looked at this every single year, and the percentages are always the same. So I'm going to go ahead and download that file. I'm going to bring it here to this side. And just to give you a breakdown of how this file works, is we have here in this column all industries. So these are all the tax returns that were filed. So that's 4 million tax returns, okay? And there is the total revenue across all the tax returns. And then we have compensation of officers and salaries and wages, which is our total payroll, which is what we're going to use as a proxy to understand how I came up with this magic number of $1,800 a day, and explain to you how I use this and leverage this to think about pricing for my future clients. So I'm going to go ahead and select this column for total receipts, because we're going to go back and look at that number particular. So I'm going to highlight that one, let's say green. And then I'm going to take the compensation of officers and salaries and wages, and I'll highlight both of those, let's say in pink. Okay. So now I know the columns I'm looking at. Now, instead of looking at all industries, I'm going to go look at the industry that mostly resembles accounting firms, or the industry where most accounting firms file when they file their tax return. So the industry that we use, or the NAICS code that we use, is going to be under this category called professional, scientific, and technical services. So some engineers file under this, consultants file under this. Anyone that offers professional services like accountants and bookkeepers and tax preparers, they would fall into this category. So it's a really good proxy to use for us to do this calculation. Now in this little box here, I'm going to grab this box with the 75As, delete that, and I'm going to use this box to then figure out what is the percentage that represents payroll, officer compensation, and employees divided by the total revenue. And the reason why officer compensation is important is because in most accounting firms, the owner, the firm, the principal does a lot of the work. Not all the work, but a lot of the work. In some cases, all the work. So I'm going to take the two numbers. So I'm going to grab officer compensation plus salaries and wages, and then just divide that by total sales or total revenue. And that gives me 29%. That's the number, okay? That's the magic number that we're going to use as a proxy, okay? And then you're going to see how I back in that number into the calculation and how it's going to make total sense that about $1,800 is that magic number. So I'm going to start by just kind of throwing numbers into ChatGPT so ChatGPT knows what to use. Now, the other number I'm going to use is what does the average person get paid in accounting firms? Now, this is a very tricky number because this number varies vastly. And if you're a solopreneur, if you're like an accountant working by yourself, whatever you pay yourself, it's a nominal number because you want to minimize your payroll tax expenses or whatever. And it's just really a tricky number to use. But I'm going to use this website, Indeed Salaries, which it's a great resource to understand what salaries look like across the United States. So I'm going to type bookkeeper, so just to kind of go through like sort of the lowest denominator here in this case. Let's go full charge bookkeeper and see what this is per year. And this is per year. This is $65,000. So in average, to hire a full-time bookkeeper, it would be $65,000. That would be a bookkeeper that would work in your firm, that you would use them to do the work. Let's go with maybe the most expensive one, a CPA. Okay, so how much would it cost in average to hire a CPA? That's $96,000. So we saw the numbers, right? Between $65,000 and $96,000. Now, one that I like a lot is senior accountant. A senior accountant is kind of a little bit CPA or a little bit bookkeeper, not quite each one, but it's a good proxy number. I like this number. Now, this is the average for the United States. If I put something like San Francisco, I'm going to assume that number is going to go way up. That goes to $105,000. If I put something like San Antonio, okay, I'm sure that's going to go way down to $80,000. So you see how these ranges really can move. So when you go back and do this analysis, which you totally can do it on your own, right? Do your analysis. You can do it based on your locale. I'm going to use the United States average, which is $85,000, as the proxy. Okay, so I'm going to go back into ChatGPT and I'm going to give it those two pieces of key information. The average senior accountant gets paid $85,000 a year, period. If I look at the IRS statistics of all the professional service firms, the total payroll cost between salaries and officers is 29% of the revenue, period. That being said, how much should be the revenue produced by or per each senior accountant in a firm? So we're going to start with simple terms, which is how much revenue we should be getting per employee, right? So just using simple math, right? We got 29% of the payroll is revenue. We're not looking at payroll taxes. We're not looking at benefits. We're just looking at the core payroll costs. And then based on this, every employee should produce $290,000 to $300,000 a year. Now, that assumes a couple of things. One, that these employees are 100% capacity, always doing revenue producing work, which is not true. A lot of these employees are doing training, are doing admin work. They're getting ramped up. They're not doing, let's say, fully productive work. So we have to include that too. And also, in my firm, for every 4 client-facing employees I had at least one admin person or one person that didn't work in client-facing, billable time, producing time, effort. Plus, as an owner, I spent 20-30% of my time doing marketing work and doing management work. So it's not realistic to use even 100% capacity. So I'm going to say on firms that are a little bit bigger, where there are, let's say, 3 client-facing people, realistically, how much more salary would be paid in admin and overhead, comma, because it's not realistic that it's 100% utilization rate. So I really want to figure out how much should I be producing per revenue producing employee when I have to account for some of the admin time. Okay, so hopefully ChatGPT understood what I meant by that, and that number is going to sort of reverse engineer itself into a bigger number. So instead of thinking about $300,000 per employee, this thing's going to jump way up to $500,000 per employee. Okay, why? Because there is some admin time we have to deal with. Now, if you are a solopreneur and you're by yourself, the calculation is way different. Probably you should look at that target of $300,000 at least of revenue you should be producing by yourself. But once you start adding people and adding overhead, these numbers really scale in this way. So now, based on that calculation, so it looks like the real revenue per, again, client-facing, revenue-producing employee should be between $400,000 to $465,000 per year. Okay, so that's kind of the rule of thumb that we're going for. So now, based on that, I want to calculate how much I should be charging per day. Because I don't like to charge by the hour. I don't like to have conversations with the client about by the hour. But I like to look at a new job, whether it's a tax return, a bookkeeping, a cleanup, and kind of reverse engineer, because it's easier for me to reverse engineer how many days more or less of one of my senior accountants it would take to complete this job. Whether it's monthly or one-time fee, it doesn't matter. I want to think of it in number of days, so then you come back and tell me what is that daily rate I should be thinking about. Okay? And this is where I think the conclusion should be roughly $1,800. Okay? So let's see as it finishes doing the calculation and see what number it comes up with. And trust me, I've done this calculation a gazillion times with so many assumptions, and it comes up with all sorts of different numbers. Perfect. So it's going to go as all the productive days with this revenue target of $430,000, $450,000. And then based on that, it's calculating about $1,700 per day. Okay. So then here's the little atomic unit pricing, which is kind of like where I want you to think about how we use that number. And again, I said 1,800, 1,700, 1,900, whatever number is. When you look at a tax return, you look at it, you're like, okay, that will take half a day. Okay, then you charge $850. You look at a cleanup job and you say that's going to take a full week, 5 days. That's $8,500. And the reason why that's the number you should use is so we can hit our revenue targets. At average, now also keep in mind that this is based on averages. Now, is your firm an average firm? Are you a little bit higher level? Are you more luxurious? Then you think about a much bigger number. Now, again, we're trying to simplify things. I don't want you to break it down by entry-level bookkeeper that gets paid $65 and CPA that gets paid $96. I don't want you to break it down at that level, because then we're talking about hourly rates. And really, our course is very much against charging by the hour or even having a conversation by the hour. Just generally speaking, for sanity check, for a professional services firm to hit national averages, right, of 60% utilization, 40%, admin, time or whatever, and hitting that 29% of your total payroll needs to be revenue. So the 29% of the total revenue needs to be payroll. That's the number. So this is the magic number. $1,800, $1,700, $1,800. Of course, you want to be a little bit above average. That's the magic number. So trust me, you start using that number and things just get super easy. Now, that being said, why do you need a course that goes much more in depth? Well, I'll tell you, if you use this one technique and it works really well, maybe you don't need it. But the reality is every client sees value different. And there are some clients that you won't be able to hit that number. They're more fortunate. They're clients to keep you busy. They're clients that you want to learn from. learn a new industry, those you might use a different process. There are clients that are willing to pay a lot more than this, 3,000, 4,000. I've gotten those all the time. And the trick for that is to be able to offer options. Now, one of the most important lessons in here, and again, you should watch the whole course, but one of the most important lessons here is called anchoring with options. And the anchoring with options teaches the specific process of offering 3-tier pricing. Again, if you were to use this process, right, where you go and you look at a tax return, you look at a monthly bookkeeping, you look at a cleanup job, whatever, and you say this will take roughly 2 days. And then you come up with $1,800 a day, that's $3,600. $3,600 is now your baseline. Now you want to do an offer, maybe a lower version of that service, not $3,600, but maybe $2,500. That's going to be your basic option. And you have to learn how to remove components of value of that option. So indeed, when you actually do the work, hopefully it won't take the 2 days. Maybe it takes 1.5 days. But again, we're reverse engineering into that. We're not using our time to figure out how much we're going to charge. And then on the other side of the coin here, instead of charging $3,600, 2 days worth, maybe we can charge $4,500 or $5,000 because we're going to offer a high option that has a whole bunch of additional components of value. And this course goes deep into how to figure out how to extract what's important to your client, what's high priority, and what are all the different ways you can add value or extract value from your options so you can offer 3 choices and let the customer choose if they're looking for average, below average, or above average. And in the long run, you'll have 20% of your clients will be all the premium clients, 20% will be all the foot in the door clients just getting started, going for the lower price, and then 60% of your clients will be in that middle. And then you'll be able to prioritize the clients that want more and give them more, and you'll be able to put a little less capacity in the clients that want less. And over time, you're going to run a really well-oiled machine. Again, that's how I did it. I saw tons of success in that. And I'll put links in the description below, including the link to this specific chat so you can actually see the progress of the conversation. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.